Today's agenda, we're going to just do a check-in. We'll let everybody introduce themselves so that we know who's on the call. And then we'll get into the topic for today. We're very happy to have Central Iowa be featured as one of our members. We have Natalie and Luke from Opportunity Central Iowa, and they're going to talk more about the opportunity plan and the working groups and best practices. And then hopefully we're going to have a bit of time for some questions and discussion, and then a bit of a closing. So I thought it would be useful to visit the purpose of this group. I know many of you were able to come on for our series, our 4-part series in the fall, where we were able to do provide an overview of what the Tamarack does and Tamarack's approach, and talk a lot around collective impact and what that means. The purpose of this community of practice going forward, we're still, I would say, in the exploratory phase of really just providing an avenue for our US members and those who are interested in the work that we do around collective impact. Really a group to come together and I think really be able to talk, kind of share, discuss challenges and successes related to poverty reduction work in an American context, because of course Tamarack is very much Canadian focused, but increasingly more we still do our work with, we do a lot of work on an international scale, but that's really been more of an emerging phase right now. So we really want to kind of grow that work, and we're working on, how that's going to look going forward. So for now, really, this is a peer network opportunity for folks here. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick round robin, let people introduce themselves, and so we know who's on the call before we get going. So if you can introduce yourself and let us know where you're calling from and kind of why you're here. Why you're interested in this community of practice. So I'm going to get, maybe we'll just start with, I'm looking at the list right now. Maybe we'll start with Natalie. Natalie, who's going to be talking today anyway.
Hi there, my name is Natalie Lynch, and I work at United Way of Central Iowa. I work on the Opportunity Plan. It's a community plan for the Central Iowa area. So we are based in Des Moines, Iowa.
No relation to Natalie, if you heard me earlier. But I also work on the Opportunity Plan. I just started working on the Opportunity Plan about 3 weeks ago, so pretty new into this, of diving deep into it. But Central Iowa, we cover 3 counties, Polk, Dallas, and Warren counties within our state.
Welcome, Luke. And Central Iowa has been a member of Tamarack for many years now. So we're looking forward to hearing more about the work in this session going forward. So we'll move to the next. I see Rachel, actually. I see Rachel's name come up. Are you there, Rachel?
Yes, I'm here. Aloha, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning to us, but most likely good afternoon to many of you, and maybe also good morning to some. Rachel Somsas. I am part of the Vibrant Hawaii movement. On the other side, I serve as Chancellor for Hawaii Community College, the community college for Hawaii Island. I believe I see another 808 number. That must be Janice. We're both. Janice, is that you?
Yeah, aloha, good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Good morning. So Janice and I, and of course Janice will do her introduction as well, just like Iowa, Central Iowa, we have joined the or has joined in a veil of Tamarack Institute's membership to help us launch our collective impact poverty reduction work. And with Janice's brilliance, we have really come a long way, but at the same time, looking forward to many more of our journey to see how we can progress like Iowa has done.
Thank you, Rachel. Glad you could join us. Janice, did you want to add anything?
Sure. So I'm on this call not only to see how we can contribute, mutually reinforcing ideas and actions, but also to, because we're so new, just really interested in learning from others, what has been their success in areas and what has been their challenges and what we might expect as part of the emerging year and in this journey.
Great, thanks, Janice. Okay, so we have, I think Susan is on here. Susan Holland?
Yes, hi, Susan Howland.
Hello.
I'm in central Massachusetts. We have a slightly more than emerging group that we were calling ourselves, right, I just blanked out on her name. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared. Opportunity for the Tri-Community. So the Tri-Community would be the towns of Southbridge, Sturbridge, and Charlton in central Massachusetts. And that's a geographical area of probably about 45,000 people. The town of Southbridge is the town that has the highest poverty rate. We have a small core group. We're still in our infancy, I would say, but we are meeting twice a month and gathering our names of who should care about poverty, who cares about poverty, such things, working towards 100 eventually. My own personal involvement in the area of poverty reduction is I'm a board member of an organization called Friends of St. Luke's, and I'm also the treasurer, and we run a homeless shelter in Southbridge. We've been working with Tamarack for probably four to 6 months, but we're coming along. I'm the person that can come on the Zoom meetings at this hour, so I'm sort of the data collection person and listening person for gathering information from other areas. I know both Rachel and Natalie and others have helped us tremendously in our efforts and have communicated information that's been really helpful for us. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Susan. I think you've got Dan is with you as well, right? Or Dan is
on. I see his name on the call. Yes.
I see his name.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Dan.
How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you. It's been a while. Yeah, I'm a pastor at Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Central Mass in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, and I'm somewhat connected with Opti at the moment. And one of the other connections we have is our the church here is in partnership with St. Luke's Guest House, which is the homeless shelter in Southbridge. And so my role is sort of progressing and evolving as I get settled in here. And but I'm happy to be on the call and be a part of this conversation.
Great. Thanks for joining. I know we have some, there's a call, I think there's a number on here. I'm not familiar what that is. It's a 915? Or is that someone?
That might be me in El Paso. This is
Hello.
Warren Goodell.
Oh.
Hello.
Hi, Warren.
And
okay.
many thanks to Tamarack for making this opportunity to poke my nose in and find out a little bit more. We're kind of in preconception. Maybe we're even just starting to think about whether we should be dating or not. But I hope that we'll build a good program here in El Paso along the lines of the work you've done in Canada. I am Executive Director of Kelly Center for Hunger Relief. It's a combination food pantry and a Fresh Start program. Fresh Start is one-on-one work with individuals to get them off the food line, to develop human capital that will expand their independence. But I'm also a founder and on the board of the Sun City Hunger Relief Coalition, and we've defined our poverty numbers, our hunger numbers around poverty. So this made perfect sense to look at how we can reduce poverty as a way to reduce hunger in our community.
Mm-hmm. That's great, thanks. And I think actually we have, I think I said we didn't have anybody else from Texas, but actually Ophelia, you're from Texas, right?
Right. Yes.
So welcome.
Can you hear me?
Welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so I am working with Larkin Taggett, Maya Consultant. My background has been a community organizer for about 30 years, trained under the Industrial Areas Foundation, and been working in neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods, all that time, and I lived in them. And so we are just starting. We've had 3 meetings so far as a team, trying to begin this effort in identifying what are the barriers, issues that are increasing poverty here in Austin, Texas. So thank you for Natalie and Luke for inviting me to this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And I think is Maria connected with you?
She is having a hard time getting on. So
I see her name.
oh, okay.
Are you with us, Maria? Yeah. I see Maria's name there, so maybe you were able to get on, hopefully. Okay, so I think one more person I see on the list is Tom. Hi, Tom. Tom from Tallahassee, I think. Is that right? Yeah. You're on mute, so I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. Oh, maybe we'll have some time afterwards. Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Am I missing on the call?
Can you hear me?
Well, glad. Oh, hello, Tom.
Yeah,
Hi.
this is Tom Taylor. So,
Hello.
Glad to be
me.
on with you and look forward to the program.
Great. And we have you here from Tallahassee, right?
Correct.
Okay. Great. I'm sure you're enjoying, milder weather than what we've got up here.
It's in the 70s.
Yeah, we're knee deep in snow where we are right now. So,
But it froze there last week, so it varies.
Okay. Well, I'm glad everyone's with us. I know, but they'll be wanting to hear some of the follow-up that comes out of today. So I am going to hand it over to Natalie and Luke, who are going to talk about Opportunity Central Iowa and talk about the plan, and I think the working groups and best practices. So I want to make sure you have enough time to get through what you wanted to talk about. And then hopefully we'll have some time for questions and discussion as well. So over to you, Natalie and Luke.
So hi there, my name is Natalie Lynch, and as Elle mentioned, I work at the United Way of Central Iowa on the Opportunity Plan. What we know is that poverty is complex. That's one of the reasons that we're here today. We're here to share information about the work that we've been doing in Central Iowa, covering 3 counties to reduce poverty. As I mentioned in my intro, we are in Des Moines, Iowa, which is the capital. And so we do experience poverty here. And so we're going to tell you a little bit about that. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and have us Luke's going to kick us off here for the first few slides, and then I'll jump back in and we'll talk about the work groups and the structure.
And just a point of note here, should I be advancing the slides, Ella, or are you able to do that? Or is there a way for me to do it?
Sorry, I just muted myself. I've got the slides. I can just let me know when you want me to move the slides, and that's okay. Sometimes it's easier if just one person does it, so I can do it.
Sounds good. Thank you. We're here in Iowa, home of the famous Iowa caucuses, or now the infamous Iowa caucuses. A lot has happened here in the last week. A lot of exciting stuff, but you know, we've got a lot going on in Central Iowa, and the caucuses are part of that. We have every 4 years we have a lot of money that comes in. Along with the caucuses comes a lot of national articles about how great Des Moines is, and how even since the last 4 years there's a lot of cool things happening here. And that's true, there are a lot of very cool things happening here. But this opportunity plan started in 2014, realizing that we end up on a lot of different lists. And I'm on slide 3. So we're on a lot of different lists in Central Iowa. A lot of top 10 lists: best place to raise a family, best place to thrive, best place to, you name it, we're on that list. But we know that there's a lot of poverty in our community. Elle, if you would go one more slide, that one, perfect. So we know that that we've got a lot of issues here. There's just a lot of good things going on. Our economy was improving after the recession, but there was a lot of people still struggling. A lot of people went back to work, but we know that a lot of people went back to work 2 or 3 jobs and were still considered working poor. So we have high poverty levels here in Central Iowa, and we're affecting many community issues. And our United Way of Central Iowa works in health, education, and financial stability are the 3 pillars of United Way of Central Iowa. And I'll get into a little bit of the background of how opportunity came out of that here. So in June of 2014, a group of 100 people came together from 4 different areas of our community. And so they made up business leaders and philanthropists, government, school leaders, nonprofit leaders, community members with lived experience. So those folks all came to the table to come to a common understanding of what is poverty, what are the issues in our community. So that's where we started off, with the baseline of all those people, and we strategically sat them in a room. They didn't know this, but we sat them at tables so that there was an equal amount of each 4 of those groups at every table. And so after 2 days with Paul Bourne, we came to this conclusion. We came to the opportunity plan, or to this plan, if you will. So after that, we had leaders meeting every other week to kind of decide what the next steps were. And now I'm on to the next page, or next slide here. So we came to the understanding that opportunity is a collective impact initiative fighting to reduce poverty and eliminate barriers that prevent Central Iowans from thriving. So we're driven by the belief of 3 things here. Poverty and barriers to financial stability prevent Central Iowans from thriving in our community. We can, through collective action, eliminate these barriers and reduce poverty. And that change cannot happen without all of us. So we need you to advocate, educate, participate, and communicate. So those are the 3 things that came out of that meeting of 100 people in 2014. And so from there, like I said, and really, I'm still working on my elevator speech after 3 weeks, but I think it can be boiled down to, this is our poverty reduction plan. This is our grassroots plan that our community has agreed on to tackle and eliminate poverty in Central Iowa. A quick background of it, and I'll hop to the next slide here. And just a kind of an overview of the collective impact model that we came to agree on, and that was kind of the baseline for our discussions. If there's a common agenda, shared measurement, how are we going to measure success, and then how are we going to bring folks together from different sectors to reinforce activities. The continual communication comes into play, and I think this is where the work groups come in, and Natalie will talk about it here in a little bit. But it's important to keep the conversation going, and knowing also that the conversation evolves. And so not to kind of steer it one way or another, but just to make sure to facilitate that conversation to continue. Important. And then that backbone of support, of which United Way of Central Iowa is that backbone for the plan. But we're very clear that it's separate. Yes, we are a part of United Way of Central Iowa, but opportunity is the community's plan to reduce poverty. It's not United Way's plan. It's the community that is really driving this plan. So I'm on to the next slide here. As I mentioned, United Way is backbone. And we started out as the positions of the opportunity director was a contractor through United Way. And then I think we realized to really stress that independence aspect, but I think we realized that there's a lot of crossover, and it made more sense to have the director and project manager or coordinator be underneath United Way's umbrella, but still allowing that independence, which I think we've struck a good balance there. So we have 8 work groups that Natalie's going to talk about here in a little bit, but they implement work plans, lead advocacy efforts, provide research and data, communications, and administrative support. So it is their groups. We help guide those, work on when the meetings are going to be, provide materials, and provide support when needed. But our biggest thing is to make sure that those meetings happen and that the right people are invited and that they're at the table and have a voice. So then the next slide, our goal is to increase the percentage of Central Iowans who are financially self-sufficient to 75%. Now, ideally, we would love to get that to 100%. But 75 is a realistic number. And on to the next slide here, you'll see this is after the recession, we started keeping, United Way of Central Iowa started keeping track of this information. And you'll see we used the American Community Survey for this. We have been using this data since 2009. And we've seen a decrease for several years after the recession. And it wasn't until 2016, see there, that we saw an uptick in our self-sufficiency. And so we started this plan in 2014. So there's some correlation there, we believe, and that's it. So we say, and maybe we'll go to the next page here, or the next slide, sorry. We use ALICE data for our 250% of poverty. Obviously, the census data only takes into account 100% of poverty and less, but we use ALICE data, which is asset limited, income constrained, employed. So those folks who are the working poor, those folks who fall between very poor and poor. And 250% is what we have determined through ALICE data is what it needs to become self-sufficient, to start to put money away for retirement, to start to not have to worry about where the next meal is going to come from, and to be comfortable and to make financial decisions and to live a better life, to become financially self-sufficient. So we've seen this increase over the last several years. You'll see, and they're very small increases on the previous slide you saw, but overall we've seen 36,000 more Central Iowans in the last 3 years become financially self-sufficient. And that's all while our community continues to grow, especially in rural Iowa. A lot of rural communities are becoming smaller and dwindling as the ag economy becomes more and more of big business, if you will. And so, and elderly populations in rural communities, and there's not a lot of young, thriving communities. So we see more people coming to our communities. At the same time, we see refugees coming in. We see different groups coming in. So we're really proud that we've seen, while our population continues to grow, we've seen 36,000 more Central Iowans become self-sufficient. And that's in large part thanks to the Opportunity Plan that started in 2014. Are there any questions there before I hand it off to Natalie of where we've come and how we started? And Elle, you know about this too, so did I miss anything that that you know of or that you can highlight? Am I hearing that I'm perfect? Because my wife would tell me I'm not.
Actually, I do have a question. And this is just trying to assimilate everything you just said quickly. How do you correlate your measurement, your benchmarks, the census data and the ALICE data with the initiatives that you've taken? How do you connect those things? How do you know that it's actually the work that you're doing in the community that is causing these people to come out of poverty, the 36,000 to come out of poverty?
I think that there's not, I don't think, a direct line to it. I would say though, and we're very lucky here with United Way as our backbone. We have a team of data experts who are digging into all of this data and saying, and even with our United Way funding, when we fund programs and initiatives, we say, how are you going to get us to these goals, and how are we doing all of this? But
Right.
we know that so that's a part of the equation, and so their United Way is at the table. Some of the United Way staff are leading our work groups because they've got that expertise.
Yeah.
And then we have the other grassroots community experts who are saying, well, if we did this, these are the things that people in lived experience are seeing, and if we can only connect the dots here. So I think a good example would be through our reentry work. We've seen a lot of progress there in the last few years. So people returning into the community from who have been incarcerated. We've seen successes at the Capitol and through advocacy efforts where we have lifted the restriction on driver's licenses. So we've done that. And for others, that is when people would come out, they wouldn't have a driver's license, but we would expect them to get a job and become self-sufficient. But how are you going to get to work if you don't have a driver's license? Well, you're not either going to get to work or you're going to get in a car and you're going to drive. And if you get pulled over, you're going to go back because you're not supposed to drive. So just things like that we've seen. But then we can draw the line that those people who are coming back are now employed at this rate, who have gone through our programs. We've connected them with jobs. We've trained them while they're in prison to come out and be equipped for jobs. And then when employers know this is what I can expect from somebody, and then we can tailor the education to what the employers want and line them up. So just through just being very strategic, but I don't think there's a direct line. These conversations and having all of these folks at the table, we're very sure that it plays a part in the increase.
Sure, and I have no doubt that it is. I'm just, in terms of our foundational initiative here, and we haven't even identified the things that are keeping people in poverty, although I know there are a lot of parallels in a lot of areas. I mean, the business is huge. Transportation is, we actually have launched the survey, and we have several hundred at the moment, and we're hoping for even more to try to identify those things that are keeping people in poverty. So we're still identifying what those things are, but transportation is a huge one. And part of the transportation is I lost my driver's license, or I can't get my driver's license because I can't pay my child support. So all those things. But I just wanted to hear from you about how you connect the dots. And it seems like you've got your criteria identified as what's keeping people in poverty. And then you've got this awesome data teams. I'm so envious that helping you connect those dots. Did I hear that pretty much?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I'll hand it off to Natalie now, and she can kind of work through our work groups and how the logistics of everything works.
I will just echo what Luke was saying. We do have an awesome data team here. And so they have been instrumental in helping us capture stats and with the reporting. It's hard to be able to track some of the work that we're doing because a lot of the stuff is happening outside of our walls here. It's happening out in the community, and to capture those successes, it can be challenging. And so when we get to the end of the PowerPoint presentation, I've got some best practices, and one of them that I'll go ahead and share now is just really capturing all of your wins along the way, big or small, and starting off today doing that. They add up, and sometimes there's not always a number that's associated with them, but yeah, just the small wins are just as important as the big wins as you move forward. So with that being said, Luke provided some background on opportunity and where we've been. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the structure of opportunity, and then I'm going to provide some information about the work groups, communicating with the work groups, some of the successes that we've had, and then just sharing some knowledge with the group and some best practices that I've seen since I started with the implementation of the plan in December of 2016. So with that being said, the Opportunity Program Director and the Opportunity Program Coordinator position, which is the position that I am in, originally started off as contract positions with United Way of Central Iowa. So the Opportunity Program Director, that position was filled in July of 2016. And I was hired in December of 2016 to help with the implementation of the plan. Since I started has really, I guess, really started off as implementing the plan and going forward with it, executing upon it. We also have, so this is something new that evolved since I started. We have an executive committee, and the executive committee includes the president of United Way of Central Iowa. It also includes our United Way of Central Iowa Chief Community Impact Officer, our program director, and we've got 2 people from the community who are also part of that Opportunity Executive Committee. And they're providing the oversight for all of the work that we're doing. We have an Opportunity Council. And the Opportunity Council, so this is your steering committee for the work groups. And we've got the council reflective, the people on the council are reflective of the 4 sectors. So we've got government, nonprofit, lived experience, and which one am I missing here? Business, sorry. So our Opportunity Council is inclusive of the 4 sectors per the collective impact model. And then we also have the opportunity work groups. And so the opportunity work groups, so we have 8 of them. And each of the work groups is led by somebody in the community. So each work group has a lead and a co-lead. You could say a chair or a co-chair as well too. And so I'll just talk a little bit about the opportunity work groups here. So what we've learned is that it's best for the work group leads to be people from the community versus somebody from United Way of Central Iowa. We do have 2 work groups that we have organizations within the community who are already leading that work, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So for housing, we have the Polk County Housing Trust Fund. And so the work group lead for that is also part of the Opportunity Council representing the housing sector and nonprofit. And he is actually leading the Opportunity Housing work group versus somebody at United Way, if that makes sense. And then we have another example is our transportation work group. So within the Central Iowa area, we have the Iowa Department of Transportation, which represents the entire state of Iowa. We have the Des Moines Area MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. They help with all modes of transit. And then we have our bus system. It's called DART. It's the Des Moines Area Regional Transit System. And so our transportation work group is led by those 3 organizations because those people are doing the work already in the community. And so it didn't make sense. They were willing and wanting to do it, and it didn't make sense to have somebody from United Way lead that when we've got partners in the community who are already doing that work and willing to lead it. Do we have any questions about the structure? It's just the 2 of us right now, so it's still Luke and myself. And we are supported by United Way of Central Iowa.
Hi, this is Warren. Matt. A quick question.
Yes.
Matt, go ahead.
I read through your 40-page document, the presentation that was sent to me online.
Yes.
And the things that were accomplished in Central Iowa were really impressive. But I'm trying to figure out, once you've understood those things and are impressed by them, how do they help us here at OPT in Southbridge, Massachusetts? Because we are, as you know, just at the beginning stage. So for me, what I need to have are the steps it takes to go from where we are to the next best step or steps. So I'm not sure what the advantage is of all of this information that we're not even near approaching. So tell me what the value is of what you're telling us.
Okay, so what we are sharing here from Central Iowa is how we got to where we are today, how we're able to celebrate some of the successes. One of the things I'm going to talk about as we go on in this presentation is the work groups. So the work groups are going to be important. They're going to be made up of people from the community who are representing different sectors, who are actually doing the day-to-day work. So Luke and I, as people who are working on the opportunity plan here in Central Iowa, we are helping to lead and manage the plan for Central Iowa, but it's actually people from the community who are doing the work on a day-to-day basis. And so that's going to be important to helping achieve your successes going forward.
Okay, so that sounds like our next step is to begin formation of these groups. Does that make sense?
One of the things, I guess I'll share some best practices at the end, but I would say one of the things that's going to be most important is identifying who's going to be your backbone support.
Ah, yes, indeed.
So that's
you have
going to be that's one of the first things.
Yeah.
And it could, maybe it is a United Way, I'm not sure. We're still learning as we're going through the process here. And so, maybe it's a United Way, maybe it's a city, maybe it's, the city of Massachusetts or something like that. I'm not as familiar with what you've got there, but, we have cities who have community plans, and maybe
Sure.
one part of it is reducing poverty.
So are you saying our next step should be to develop this backbone relationship?
Elle, I'm going to defer to you on that. I think having the backbone support is crucial. The other thing that's crucial too, Matt, is having a collective impact model. And that's something that I've learned about since I started with United Way of Central Iowa, working on the opportunity plan, just how powerful collective impact is. You're bringing people together from different sectors to solve a specific social problem. And in our case here in Central Iowa, we're wanting to fight poverty. We are fighting poverty. We're reducing poverty. We're eliminating the barriers and the obstacles that are preventing people from obtaining self-sufficiency. And so when, I'll just give you an example, when we have representation from the different sectors, we're able to make decisions together quicker than if we were working independently as, for example, a nonprofit organization, or as, for example, a faith-based organization. When we've got representation from nonprofits, from business, government, education, healthcare, from the different sectors, and we all meet together, which is what our work groups do, we're able to make change quicker. That's been my personal experience. Elle, I don't know if you want to, I'll pass it over to you if you want to add anything on to that.
No, I think that was really useful, and I think that there's a value absolutely in seeing or understanding better the process and how you're structured, but also what has happened and what you've had to do, the steps along the way. Absolutely. So Southbridge, or OPT, I should say, you are more at the emerging, or I would say you're at the earlier stages of development, but you are also engaging with Paul in the expert coaching process. So that is helping with building that community engagement and all that work that needs to, happen to build that common agenda and get to that backbone support. And you're probably not there yet. But that's what you will be working towards. And once you, it's a process that, takes a little bit of time, especially if you're engaging with Paul during this process, which Opportunity Central Iowa had done a few years back, that you're at that stage where you're working towards a community engagement event, this big event where you're engaging with different sectors. From then is likely when you're going to be able to build and establish work groups. So it's you're just a little bit earlier on than where opportunity is, of course, but it's helpful to get the background. But the coaching process will help you along with this as well.
And
Great.
if I could just jump in, since I'm in the same community project as Matt, and he wasn't on when I introduced myself, but that we are definitely moving forward in our community engagement initiatives and gathering community leaders who will sit at that table, and we're optimistic that once we get to that point that our backbone may emerge. Right now we have a very tiny backbone, and it's Friends of St. Luke's who operates the homeless shelter. And, we are a very tiny backbone, but we're providing a little bit of a skeleton to, you know, in the interim till we get to that point. But it is a slow process, and it's very organic. And working with Tamarack, I see that very acutely, if you will, that it takes time to develop the relationships in the community and to develop the common agenda, to really start speaking that language so people understand what you're talking about when you go into various sectors of the community, including all the sectors: business, nonprofit, government, and lived experience. So I would just like to say, from my perspective, I think we're coming along just fine. It's just sometimes slow and messy. And what I hear you presenting to us is, by the time we get to the point of identifying the needs and establishing working groups, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, because you've already got the wheels that we can sort of adopt. So that's my perspective.
Thanks, Susan. That was well said. I would just like to add that our core group is committed to a long-term process. You know, no one's in a hurry. We want to do this thoroughly and properly, and again, have recognized that we're talking about the possibility of this taking years, and we accept that.
It does take time. So our planning began in 2014, and it's 2020 now. So we're actually celebrating 5 years this year of having the opportunity plan. So it does take time. I know
I did have one question about your employment, if you don't mind. How are you both full-time employees?
Yes.
So we didn't have this position to begin with, and I think as we came to facilitating the work groups, Paul suggested that the next phase was to bring a full-time staff on to direct it, because we had all these pieces together that were operating somewhat on their own, and we needed somebody to direct them and keep together. So we are employed by United Way of Central Iowa, and we receive a few grants from a few different folks to help.
Help fund it, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
The thing that dazzled me in reading the information was that you began in 2014 and you did your 100 community members meeting also in 2014. And that's pretty amazing. Share your secret with us, or is that the backbone that made that possible?
I think a big part of it is the backbone of United Way of Central Iowa, but our community here is really special, and that's not to say that others aren't, but I think we're just the right size, and when it comes to United Ways, we're just the right size where we can make that difference but United Way carries a lot of clout, so having that background, it opens a lot of doors to get a lot of people in the door.
Sounds great. We're meeting with Paul on Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We just add, as far as convening 100 members from the community, that's how we ended up with our work group. So Elle, if we can go on to the next slide. So back in 2014, we gathered 100 community members together. We worked with them, we talked with them, we had these community conversations to learn about what their needs are. And so from that is where we've developed these 8 work groups. And I'll just go through them here. So We have a work group that's addressing the childcare cliff effect. We've got 2 work groups on education. One of them is pre-K through high school graduation. Another one is adult education and employment. We have a work group on food insecurity, housing and homelessness, New Iowans. So our New Iowans work group is really focused on refugees and immigrants. How do we help refugees and immigrants get jobs, secure housing, get access to transportation? Transportation is one of our work groups. And then our last work group is the Reentry Task Force. And so the Reentry Task Force is helping returning citizens or people who are formerly incarcerated get connected to employment, housing within our community after leaving prison. And so we want them to be able to contribute back to our communities. And so helping them get jobs helps everyone. And so each of our work groups, I'm not going to get into what each of the work groups is doing right now. I'm going to jump ahead just to help you guys understand how they're structured. So each of our work groups has a lead and a co-lead. It could be a chair or co-chair, however you want to name it. These people that are leading the work groups are people from the community for the most part. So they're either people who are invested in the work through their place of employment. They're passionate about the work that's being done. So maybe they're passionate about food insecurity, or maybe they're an upcoming leader within the community as well too. There's a vested interest in how and why they're connected. Let's see here. All of our work group members are volunteers. Everybody's a volunteer. Our work group leads, our co-leads, and then the members that come around the table who are engaging in the work, they're all volunteers. Okay, each work group has a work plan, and I've outlined here on this slide what's included in the work plan. So we've got an overview, an objective. There's a core team. We also have subgroups that have formed, goals and action items, and I've provided a couple of slides of what our work plans look like. So these are internal work plans or working documents that each of the work groups is working on. And you'll see the goals on the work plan. Those are what are in the opportunity plan. So those are what's in this plan right now. But what you're seeing on the screen is the working document. One of the things I will say is that over, I guess, the evolution of the opportunity plan, the work groups originally started out as meeting as a work group, and then within that work group meeting, we would work in subgroups. The subgroups are aligned with the goals. We've developed to the point where the subgroups are actually meeting outside of the monthly work group meeting. So you might start off as a work group meeting, but then eventually the subgroups will start meeting outside of the work group. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. And then, as I mentioned too, so your goals are actually the subgroups. So as far as the communication, so this is something important as it relates to the work group. So how I'm communicating. I set up a recurring meeting. So I set up a recurring meeting series for the work groups. The work groups are meeting on a monthly basis. We create an agenda for every work group meeting, and we send it out 1 week in advance. And then I'm also cross-posting on social media. So Facebook specifically, we have a Facebook page, Opportunity DSM. And so I'm creating events, which are the monthly work group meetings, and then I'm promoting the events on our Facebook page. And then we're also attending the work group meetings. So we attend the work group meetings to support the work group leads. We are also making sure that we are meeting the goals and staying on track. And then really, I mean, it's really about supporting the work groups and representing opportunity. Okay, we can go ahead and flip to the next slide, please. So we have work groups that meet on a monthly basis. When I first started out, we were having opportunity summits 4 times a year. So every quarter we would have a summit that is tied into one of the work groups that we are increasing awareness of a specific topic. So with that being said, when I first started, we had a summit on youth employment, which was an outcome of our education work group. So we had our education work group, we had a summit on youth employment, and we wanted to increase awareness of the barriers that youth have in obtaining employment. In 2018, we shifted gears a little bit. We started having an annual meeting. So we dropped the number of summits that we were having down to 2. So we still have an opportunity summit in the fall, an opportunity summit in the spring, and then on an annual basis in June, we have an annual meeting where we convene the community to thank them for supporting the plan, thank our volunteers, and celebrate our successes. Okay, please go ahead and go to the next slide. I know we're running out of time here. I've got some of the successes that we've experienced. Luke talked about the first one with having 11,000 more Central Iowans who are financially self-sufficient. Within the past 3 years, we've had 36,000 additional Central Iowans who are financially self-sufficient. Please go to the next slide. Fighting poverty together. So this is where we're going. This is the direction that we're going now. If you look at the back of the opportunity plan, you'll see what we're doing. We're addressing policy issues. That's a lot of our work, and that's been something that's been evolving since I started, is the advocacy component of it, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. Can we go ahead and go on to the next slide? Okay, so this is really what I want to share some information with everybody about. This is the slide of things that I've learned and I think are good things for everyone to be aware of. So the backbone support is going to be a key component, or is a key component of the collective impact model, and will help you in creating a plan and advancing the work. I would say be intentional about convening people with similar interests. So what we do here is if we know that there are multiple groups in the community meeting on the topic of transportation, we try and bring everybody together so that we're having one conversation about transportation, for example, or housing in Central Iowa. So we bring people together from the 3 counties to talk about housing, to talk about transportation, to talk about food insecurity. And so if you remember, the collective impact is when we're bringing people together with similar interests to solve a specific, this is what we're doing. The work is community driven. It's important for the work group leads, the co-leads, and members to identify their goals and actions. Everyone is a volunteer, and how we're able to make this work to achieve successes is by working together and having the community work. So we've developed this new terms, I guess. It's grassroots. And so when I first started, we didn't talk about grassroots, but we talk about our grassroots efforts now, because the work that we're doing is led by the community. And, you know, in order to achieve our goals, the community has to help set those goals, because we want them to help support them. if that makes sense. Let's see here. Advocacy is important in making change. So much of our work is requiring policy changes. Luke talked about the driver's license, and so we were able to make that change not only in Central Iowa, but the state of Iowa as well too. And so we work closely with our advocacy officer for United Way of Central Iowa, who's actually up at the Capitol right now as we speak, helping to advocate for the sales tax exemption for food pantries and food banks and the child care cliff effect. And so that's become an important thing. Capture your small and your big wins along the way in a spreadsheet. That's something that I know we weren't doing right away, and I wish that somebody would have told us to do that, because everything is a win at this point in time, I would say. Out in the community, always talk about your plan and look for organizations and businesses to endorse it. And that can all start right now. As you're talking with people, hey, what do you think about, what we're trying to do here? Would you be interested in supporting the plan? Just talk about it all the time. Begin building your database now, don't wait. So I was very, very intentional when I first started about collecting business cards. I collected so many business cards when I first started, and I just started putting them into a spreadsheet. Any conversation that you have with somebody talking about the business card, or ask them if they would be interested in learning more about the plan. And that's how we were able to grow our distribution list. Our first year, we grew our list 100%. We went from 900 to 2,000 in our first year, and that was intentional about involved to collecting the business cards. I put down here, invest in a CRM tool. A CRM tool is a customer relationship management tool where you can, it's a database where you can enter, name, email address, any contact information. You can enter what sector they're from. And so, a few months later, down the road, if you want to know who's representing your business community, you can easily pull that information, and it's right there. Evaluation is important. That's honestly something we haven't been as good about. And so that's something that we are definitely working on and going to make great strides in better evaluating the work that we're doing. We do some things internally within the organization, but as far as opportunities specifically, I know that's something that we're going to be working on. And then I'd mentioned earlier, hosting an annual meeting to thank members for their support and collecting the wins. And then the last thing, it's on here twice, but the collective impact model, I cannot say enough about the collective impact model and how powerful it's been for the work that we're doing here. I'm obviously passionate about it, but we've been able to get where we are because of the collective impact model. And so as an organization too, United Way, we do rely on the collective impact model as well too. And it's very important to the opportunity work. So with that, I know we're over time. Luke's information and my information is on the next slide here. There's definitely a lot to share, and I would be happy to continue this conversation. There's not a roadmap for the work that we're doing, and so we're bringing things together as best we can. And Tamarack has been a huge supporter of the work that we're doing here. So.
Thanks. Thank you, Natalie and Luke, both of you. I know that you shared quite a lot, and there was quite a lot of insight and experience, and a lot of key learnings there that are really important. I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions. It may be that some of this we can pick out some of these pieces and have them as further kind of discussion going forward with the group. I know that we're over time. If anybody, if people are okay for a few more minutes, are there any pressing questions right now? We can also follow up via email. We will share these slides afterwards. Does anybody have any immediate questions?
I think if there's one thing that I would say, it's that it looks like we've got our stuff together, and we're very lucky to have this backbone support. But we've been at the point where it's okay, what's next? If that's any reassurance, you know, we're still figuring out where to go next. And so collectively, we've come together around all of this. We started, you know, looking at this and thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to get to that? I wouldn't look at it that way. I would just look at it at what's next, because what you do may not look like this. And so that's fine. And I think that's the beauty of the collective impact model. Yes,
I'd like to ask if you guys have a strategy for culture change to make poverty in your community unacceptable.
I don't know that I don't think we've talked specifically about that, making it unacceptable. I think that was the understanding of the group coming together. A lot of people suffering, and that's not acceptable to have this many people suffering. But I don't know, and in terms of that, you use that.
Yeah, we haven't said that it's unacceptable. We've convened people from the community and have buy-in from many people to reduce poverty, but we haven't came out and said anything as specific as it's unacceptable. We use the word fight. We have been using the word fight, and I know that there was some hesitation around that internally. We're fighting to reduce poverty here, but we haven't gone as far to say it's unacceptable and it's not going to be allowed here.
Don't you think the work that you're doing changes the culture, even if indirectly, but the nature of your work changes the culture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's some other things that Luke and I have talked about, and even when Seth was the opportunity director as well too, mental health and health has came up, equity has came up as well too. We do have another report within our community. It's called the One Economy Report. And so, that addresses our people of color. And it does coordinate with the work that we're doing here. And I don't have enough knowledge to speak on behalf of the One Economy Report, but it's something that you might find worthwhile as it looks at race and people of color within our community.
This is Tom Taylor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm originally from Iowa, but have been in Florida for 30 years. My question in looking at what you've been doing, it looks like most of your participants are members of the United Way. And I'm wondering to what degree you've been able to reach out to the private sector and the public sector, the faith community, and build that broader coalition. And in particular, you talked about the measures that you have. Have you been able to get kind of, each of those groups may have their own kinds of measures and they're overlapping, and but it seems like what we've tried to do in Tallahassee is to create a set of measures, that all the groups would work towards, it, that are related to a set of goals that everybody's working towards.
I think that the goals that we've set have been in agreement with those 4 different sectors and those folks that have been at the table. With United Way as our backbone, we do have a lot of United Way support, but some of those people are now involved with United Way because of their involvement with Opportunity, where we've set things in motion and said, okay, well, how can we take this to scale, or how can we get more involved, or how can we do things? So maybe there's a member who got involved with the Child Care Cliff Effect who's now a member of our advocacy committee, because that's an important thing to advocate for at the Capitol, and they really got involved and invested in the work. So I think that there's some overlap that, yes, maybe they started United Way and then are part of Opportunity, but there's also goes the other way. And we're working with faith groups. We're actually working on the Convoy of Hope program. I don't know how many of you have had it in your cities, but a national program that comes into cities and provides different services for the community. And we think that's great. The faith community is putting that on, but we're working with the faith community to figure out, we're going to have a lot of people in need in one place at one time. And what happens when Convoy of Hope leaves? How do we connect them to the resources? We're going to have a lot of people in one place on one day. How do we get them to resources in our community and show them what's available to them? And so we're working with the faith community, and they're very much at the table and a part of the work.
This can be a rhetorical question if you like, but where would you be without the United Way? Again, it's
Sure. And I was just going to add, before I answer that question, when we were looking at our 2,000 people engaged in the work now, so they've signed on in support of, or they're interested from us. Just because they're part of that large work group list doesn't mean that they're necessarily engaged in a work group. When we looked at our distribution list, let's see here, I think this was last year, we had approximately 800 people who were not engaged with United Way. So they came
I'm sorry, how many? I'm sorry, Natalie, how many?
It was approximately 800, and this was last year. So we had people who got involved with opportunity first before they were ever engaged with United Way. And so that's been really fascinating for me, because we've been able to attract people to this work that we're doing who are not familiar with United Way, or know anything about it. So I find that interesting. So I wanted to share that information with Tom. To answer your question, Matt, so where would we be without United Way? I don't know that we would be as far as where we are today. I think that United Way of Central Iowa specifically, when we look at all of the United Ways across the U.S., has a very good reputation here in Central Iowa and amongst all other United Ways. I would say is that we have a very generous community, which has also been very supportive of the. So with, I have a community who's poverty, but I don't honestly know that we would be where we are today as a result of that.
Aloha, this is Rachel, and it looks like Janice also left, and we're from Hawaii, and we're also happy to share our journey and what is unique about our journey and our learning experience. You asked about the cultural aspect, and so we have really modified. And we have modified. There was definitely, one of the things when we actually went to our community, this term, we're broke, but we're not broken. So we're also very cognizant of the deficit impacts of how we categorize people in poverty. So we've really expanded the definition of wealth beyond just Alice. So we've also expanded or committed to expand how we measure well-being and wealth. And so that may be as part of certainly the cultural aspect of our community. But beyond that, I think there is, for us in this group, a rich and robust learning community. And I know talking to Elle, and maybe that was Tom as well, is there is sort of a Canadian community of practice group, one on the east and on the west. And what is unique, of course, we are learning a lot from the Canadians, but and how they progress over a couple of decades. But a key part of where us, United States community practice, is some of our work is influence on the national level. And so having our own community practice, I think, becomes very critical. And I do hope that we can at least maybe have the time to begin to discuss how we can move forward to I don't know if the word formalizing, but really organizing and creating our own USCOP movement so that we can also begin to learn from each other and begin to also bring the agenda on a state and national level. So with that, because I have to leave for another meeting, but I wanted to kind of note that. So Elle, it'd be nice if you can facilitate another meeting that's just dedicated to us organizing our own U.S. community of practice.
Thank you, Rachel. Let's try to look at that maybe in our next meeting, how you can move forward with this, with that idea.
I think that's a great idea because Hawaii is more in line with where we are, with where OPT is.
For our ALICE, just FYI, our ALICE is more like 61%. ALICE and poverty. So we do have our challenges, but at the same time as we go, like I said, it was such a learning opportunity, and we went to 5 different cities. I mean, in Hawaii Island, the largest, we have 9 climates, and we also have that diversity of community. And to hear from the community to actually tell us we're broke, but we're not broken, it really refrained our approach.
That's great. Thank you, Rachel.
Aloha, everyone.
Bye, Rachel. We will, I think we'll follow up along the with another community of practice, maybe visiting that idea that Rachel has brought forth. And Natalie, just highlighting on the idea that Natalie was, you were talking about that advocacy and really focusing on addressing policy issues. So looking at how that could look from a U.S. perspective, I think we can follow up with another meeting in a couple of months about that. But I will wrap up now, given the time. So I'm just going to give a couple of closing announcements. We have a couple of upcoming learning opportunities. So I just wanted to highlight these. A lot of this information is available on our website. Some of it's more privately, so we can follow up with you if you're interested. There is a webinar coming up on February 25th around participation and involvement in communities, and it will be our own Paul Bourne with Vancouver Foundation's Lydia Kemeny, talking about engaging community. Also, we have another upcoming webinar on February 27th. This will be a bit more intimate. It's going to be talking about addressing housing through asset-based community development and that connection with poverty reduction and in social housing. We have another one. It's about data. I don't know if Susan in particular, you might be interested in this one coming up in March around data and how to become good friends with statistics. So I'm talking about some of the work in the city of New and they're a data expert and the work that they're doing around collecting data and using it. So that's a few upcoming, and another one around asset-based community development in the urban Indigenous context. So we will follow up with all of these slides and this information in the next couple of days. Please feel free to reach out to myself or anyone else. You can reach out to me directly and then we can follow up. I'd like to thank again Natalie and Luke for sharing all the background and successes that have been achieved in Central Iowa, and I think there's lots that we can learn and lots that we can kind of carry forward to some continued conversations with this community of practice. So thanks so much everyone for joining me today, and have a good rest of your day.